NetherRealm Studios just released its Mortal Kombat 11 to the masses, and with it come some interesting comparisons when looking at the male and female character designs. It's probably safe to assume that in today's climate, NetherRealm made a choice, as is their right, to ditch the potential for sexualization of the female characters by creating outfits that cover up any exposed skin. An interesting choice, but not one that comes as any kind of surprise, given the rise of an online contingent of voices who speak up against the objectification of female video game characters. However, male characters in Mortal Kombat 11 continue to present a tried and trusted masculine power fantasy, with very little in the way of outcry or resistance. This is an accepted norm, maybe, that becomes apparent when design choices seemingly pander to a subset of opinions which don't necessarily reflect the wants of the entire or paying audience. Accepted, fundamentally flawed or inconsistent artistic freedoms raise questions when extreme gore is a saleable feature, whereas sexual objectification of women is not. Let's rewind a little though, because NetherRealm might consider its potential sales with Mortal Kombat 11 by offering an inclusive game, not stepping on anyone's toes. Or they simply made a design choice to move away from the over-the-top character designs of the series past. Consideration for cultural differences between games developed in the West and those from Japan are a factor as well. The societal planes seemingly shift far more in Western gaming markets. Taking a look at the Japanese developed Dead or Alive 6, which came under fire from series fans last year due to developer Team Ninja suggesting they were toning down the sexualization of the female characters. This is despite keeping the bare-chested muscular men untouched. It was suggested a serious approach to the game's marketing would aid its impact on the tournament scene. Yet something was lost in translation, or Team Ninja deliberately used smoke and mirrors to hide the game's true appearance. Fans and non-fans were divided on the prospect of a less sexualized approach. That said, post-2019 release and a few moments shifting through the character outfits revealed plenty of clothing options which do cover up the characters. However, these sit alongside outfits where more skin and shifting breasts are exposed. The Dead or Alive series built itself around its outfits and how the female fighters were portrayed, so to ditch that would lose some of its appeal. Obviously, ignoring the expectations of the fans isn't a wise move either, considering they are more likely to fork out money for DLC extras, something the game relies on quite heavily. Thankfully, Dead or Alive 6 sexiness remains intact. Another Japanese release in 2018 came in the form of Soul Calibur 6 from Bandai Namco. This game offers the choice to play dress up with its male and female combatants. Interestingly, not shying away from what its fans expect, players can customize the female fighters, making their breasts bigger or smaller, their overall size large or small. The outfits on offer and their custom parts means all tastes enjoy the offering. You want a practical looking character covered in armour, then that is possible. A more nimble but provocative looking femme fatale, then that is achievable as well. You want a character to fight in their underwear or with very little clothing, then the series doesn't blockade that. Male characters receive similar treatment, so no division exists in terms of what is acceptable. Soul Calibur 6 does a fine job of offering choice for its players in the face of any criticisms from those who don't necessarily have an interest in the game itself. A recent fighting game from China, Fight Angel, released on Steam, not hiding its all-female buxom cast of combatants. It is well documented since 2018, Steam allows adult-themed games on its digital storefront. Fight Angel isn't adult but does allow players to nude mod the characters, and like Soul Calibur 6, offers extensive customization options. This is another Eastern developed game which simply exercises its right to offer artistic expression without pandering to those in objection. People who do object to the content in these games have a choice to vote with their wallet or ignore said games, as is their right. Going back to US-based NetherRealm Studios and Mortal Kombat then, and it's built itself up as a series all about gore. Japanese developed games like Street Fighter opted for colourful animated visuals. In contrast to Mortal Kombat, Dead or Alive 6 barely scratches its pristine looking characters. Ed Boon's game distinctively goes for the jugular, but at the same time presents its combatants in a particular way. If we look at the design choices of Mortal Kombat 9, for example, which released in 2011, it's obvious attitudes were different 8 years ago. Looking at both sexes of fighters, it's clear as far as their design, an overt sexiness presents itself. The women wear skimpy outfits, complete with bulging breasts and exposed thighs and buttocks. The men, topless, showing off impressive power physiques that would require some serious time in the gym. By today's standards, the female character designs are perhaps a little comical and rather exaggerated, although the same can't be said about the men. That was Mortal Kombat 9, and NetherRealm offered an over-the-top fighting experience full of eye candy and plenty of blood and gore. Interestingly, in 2011, gamers accepted these elements and either enjoyed the visual treat at face value or simply didn't play the game. However, today, 2019, we have an entirely different mindset from those playing or watching video games. The rise of social media provides a platform for voices who find suggestive or sexual themes and such like offensive. That is, sexual themes as far as women are portrayed. As of today, there is no movement or voice against the portrayal of male characters in video games. It's possible many Western gamers matured and now look for other stimuli in their gaming, as is natural as one's life experiences impacts our wants and desires. There are also no doubt numerous parameters which affect the expectations of those developing games and their audience. Yet, as discussed, it appears on the surface at least that some Western-based developers feel the need to change course to suit the voices of discontent. Technology naturally advanced, and by 2015, Mortal Kombat 10 presented a different set of character designs with a far more realistic look compared to Mortal Kombat 9. The female characters are more realistic in terms of their proportions and the detailing much more intricate. Whilst not offering over-the-top looking female combatants, there is an obvious shift in their outfit design. Mortal Kombat 10 overtly ditches exposed skin. The character boobs reduce in size and the sex appeal dialed down rather than removed entirely. Looking through the roster, it's clear some characters remain appealing, but it's likely most players no longer enjoyed Mortal Kombat for its sex appeal, rather got their kicks from the increased fidelity fatalities. The over-the-top violence reigns supreme here, with the graphic depictions of mutilations and death. Sexiness takes a back seat. Whether this choice was due to pandering to those complaining about the designs in Mortal Kombat 9, or being conscious of potential complaint, or simply a catalyst for the gore to take centre stage. It's clear Ed Boon, the creative lead on Mortal Kombat 9, wasn't entirely happy with the design direction it took and somewhat toned it down. In a recent interview with Playboy, he said, looking back, he wished the sexualization was toned down further than it was and would do things differently today. Again, looking at the male characters though in Mortal Kombat 10, and it's clear the accepted norm of the power male fantasy remains untouched. This sends a clear message that it's perfectly acceptable to rip off limbs and heads with buff or sexually appealing male characters, but not so much with the females. Ed Boon and NetherRealm Studios did do things differently today though, and with the arrival of Mortal Kombat 11, it's clear the choice to remove female fighters in skimpy outfits feels like a pandering to those in objection rather than merely an industry growing up. Ed Boon asks, who fights in a bikini, yet at the same time offers an assortment of impractical outfits in his fantasy fighting game. With the exception of a few female characters, most outfits cover up the skin. The outfits may offer highly detailed fabric textures, which aren't the focus when fighting, but aren't necessarily practical either. Today's technology allows impressive looking character models, which is why it's a shame choice isn't afforded to players. Allowing those who want to play with females in skimpy outfits the chance to do so when male characters fight in either revealing clothing or covered up seems like an obvious option. A lot of players do actually want to play with characters in skimpy outfits, as evidenced by several other fighting games. Unfortunately, that's not the case with Mortal Kombat 11, and ultimately, growing up means perpetuating the dominant masculine fantasy for all to objectify without stepping on the toes of those who find the same objectification levelled at women distasteful or disrespectful. That's coming from a game where you can gruesomely rip your opponent's heart or brains out and then laugh about it afterwards. Players obviously become desensitized to the gratuitous violence. Much like the previous games in the series, it's all rather comical. A shame then, the representation of what women wear gets taken far more seriously than what we can actually do to them in the game. And I will leave you with that. I'm Rob Cram. Thanks for listening or watching.
Fatality. Jackie Briggs wins. Flawless victory.